Hi there, everyone, and welcome again to another edition of Between the Lines Live. My name is Vanessa Rader. I'm the Head of Research at Ray White, and I'm here on the sunny Gold Coast talking all things Gold Coast, all things commercial property. It's a very, very exciting time. So just welcome to our guests. Great to have an external speaker with us today. So we've got here Gavin Darke. Gavin is from Clark's Design and Construct. So welcome, Gav.
Thank you, Vanessa. Really appreciate the invite. And Jackson.
Jackson Rameau.
Thank you for coming along, Gav.
Thank you, Jackson. And Jackson from our RWC business here on the Gold Coast, Pacific Group. So is that right?
It is right, Vanessa. Very excited, trying to attack the east coast of Australia and just go a little bit bigger for our agency. It's good.
Yeah, so it's a new business for you. Can you tell us a little bit about what your kind of plans are, where you're going?
Yes, still a young bloke, but have been in real estate on the Gold Coast, third generation, for 7 years now, and have probably seen a little bit of a gap in the market between, I guess, private investors and a smaller business and the larger businesses, and trying to be dynamic. So with clients like Gavin, and we can really be a little bit more dynamic in helping our clients whilst, being commission-only driven agents rather than, people from other countries telling us what to do. We're a national business with Ray White.
Yeah. Well, there's certainly a lot going on the Gold Coast. And Gav, tell us a little bit about what you do, a bit of development building.
Yeah, well, we started out, Andy Clark was the founder of our business, hence the name, Clark's Design and Construct, and we have really specialised in the industrial building sector. And Andy started the business 25 years ago, one of the longest standing commercial industrial builders on the coast.
By far. Yeah,
by far, and got a great reputation for quality and timeframes, completions, and we do everything in-house, which is very different to a lot of other building firms. And look, Vanessa, what that's done is that's sort of expanded on our abilities to develop our own properties as well. So that's where someone like Jackson comes into play. He can sort of end-to-end what it is that we do for our clientele, whether they're external clients or whether we're doing the development for ourselves. So it's been a great relationship.
Yeah, awesome. So always on the Gold Coast, both of you guys, it's certainly been a market to watch for a long period of time, but in more recent times, after COVID, pandemic, such huge population growth, such huge growth in land values, regardless really what asset class probably in, from resi all the way through to the commercial markets. You mentioned industrial. Industrial has certainly been the asset class of choice for most investors for a number of years now. We've had the lack of developable land. We've had high growth in rents, vacancy quite tight, owner occupiers really getting into the market. Like there's so many reasons why. So it's also interesting that you talk about being a in-house kind of builder, because that's kind of the stumbling block for a lot of construction at the moment. Things aren't getting off the ground because there isn't that labour. Yep. So much to unpack. But let's just start with industrial. Why industrial?
Well, it's funny you say that industrial seems to be now the darling of the investment world.
Which is so funny because it wasn't that long ago that it was like that dirty asset class that no one wanted to touch before your time, Jackson.
Correct.
I remember growing up and my father used to go, just be careful in commercial, because when I was a young bloke, leasing could take 12 to 18 months to get something leased. And now, selling something in Burleigh for close to 10 grand a metre or 7.5 a year ago is just absolutely insane. And he goes, for residential, we were struggling to get that a few years ago.
Yeah, how it changes.
And look, it does. And I think what people get drawn to is stability. So the thing about industrial, when you look at it as a build type, and you get back and let's put the development thing to one side for now, but you look at it as a build type. Everyone goes, it's really simple, it's really easy, you can get them up really quickly, and that in itself, the simplicity comes with a few complexities. And if you can iron out those complexities in your business model, then the delivery does become simple. If you've got a great tenant or a great client or a great business that's looking to expand or grow, it is a really great asset class because you can mobilise quickly, you can purchase the land, you can get the approvals relatively easy, because you're building and developing in an area that is supported by the land use. And then you can, if your processes are right, from a design, drafting and execution point of view, you can hit the ground running. And that really is the key part that draws a lot of investors to that sort of asset class, because they know they can get their money moving day one, and by day 365, they're going to be fairly close to starting to see a return. Whereas you go to a lot of these other asset classes and it's a little bit more wishy-washy. The approvals can be more difficult. and the investment timeframes can be a lot longer.
And when you talk about industrial, are you talking about the kind of broad spectrum of industrial? So where is kind of the sweet spot? Like industrial units, obviously, really attractive sort of asset class, particularly when you can on-sell them. There's storage type facilities. There's the big kind of logistics, factory type assets. Where do you kind of sit or have an opinion on those?
We've done a broad spectrum of builds and developments over the years for all of those smaller subclasses within that greater or broader spectrum. And what we're seeing now is a lot of the mum and dad investors are getting on around that $1 million, $1.5 to $1 million asset class, and they're getting a tenant and they're getting great returns. They're getting their 5.5 or 6% yields, which is fantastic. So it's opened up a larger cross section of the investment society that we didn't normally have access to. We were doing $10 million developments that were 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 square metres, and you're getting $100,000 worth of return. So that was driven a lot by high net worth individuals or, some of your
like smaller syndicates and stuff.
Smaller syndicates, managed funds, that sort of stuff. But now the smaller factories and the strata units have really opened up a broader cross section of that investment society, which I think is really fueling a lot of those commercial industrial ventures. And why I say commercial industrial, it's now starting to take a bit more of a slant to that commercial side. It's not just purely industrial, where everyone used to associate that as dirty, loud, noisy.
Look where we're sitting here today in an office in an industrial commercial precinct rather than an office building in the CBD.
Yeah.
I think also, Gavin, the investment market, but also the smaller, $1.5 million price range has opened up a lot of owner occupiers to be able to have an emotional attachment to something, to be in Burleigh Heads and be 2 minutes from their new apartment, or they're downsizing, kids have moved out of home and they still want space for the jet ski, the trailer, maybe a little office or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, the thing with the owner-occupier market as well is that there's been such huge increases in rents over the last, number of years. Like there has been ongoing rent increases. So if you want to shelter yourself from that, even if you're a little small business and, you're a little plumbing business or a construction or something, you want to have kind of control over your destiny. Like it makes sense. And we've seen that trend across the entire country. Like Perth is a really good example. I was there just recently, where the owner occupiers are totally outbidding all the other investors because they just want to have certainty over their accommodation. That's a market that's so constrained when it comes to new supply as well. But also the private investor market, that small kind of mum and dad space, it really has transformed over pretty much since COVID, to be fair. Interest rates are really low. A lot of people looking at diversifying from perhaps a traditional residential investment. Have you seen a lot of buyers agents kind of swooping around in the market? Because we certainly have in other parts of the country.
Yeah, I would also say, just going back, Neoval, which are attached to Ray White, I was actually having a look before we started here today, and the unit pricing in, let's say, Brisbane, southeast Queensland, as well as house pricing, has gone up nearly over 100% in the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
So I think also a lot of people have gone, maybe we don't buy just using Gold Coast, the riverfront home for the wakeboard boat and to store the cars. Maybe we buy a nice beachfront apartment and buy a really nice man cave or factoryette for the wife or husband.
Yeah. That's all. Well, thanks for the plug for Neoval. So Ray White Now, it's our regular research that we do for residential. So have a look at that. Thank you for that.
It's actually pretty good.
It is pretty awesome. And it's now localised. So speak to your local agent. But also there's very similar trends up in the sunny coast as well. Like I know the guys up in Noosa, they do a lot of that kind of man cave sort of space as well, particularly for that sort of kind of movement in population. Okay, so that's the kind of industrial unit space. How about do you deal in any kind of bigger sort of semi-logistic-y sort of things?
Yeah, absolutely. We've recently done a couple of large format buildings, industrial use buildings, and they've been in places like Ipswich, a little further west. They're opening up that western corridor, and they've specifically chosen that area because that's the central hub of where they need to then circulate logistically from. They've got a local group of staffing. I think they're about 40 or 50 individuals, and they're working out of a 10,000 square metre factory. And we built that 12 months ago for them. And I remember sitting down at the table with the customer or the client, And I said, you do realise in 12 months' time you're going to be looking for another 10,000, right? And he goes, oh, come on, mate. That's not going to happen. I said, listen, I see this all the time. Your business and the way you guys are driving this thing, you're going to need the space. Funnily enough, I think they put an offer, and I think the acceptance came through last week, where they've just purchased another 10,000 square metres.
Yeah. Good news story.
So we're starting on the design and construct process for that client. So yeah, we're seeing businesses mature at a rate that we've probably never seen them mature at. I mean, if we wind the clock back 10 years ago and I was sitting here having that same conversation, would I be saying that a business, any business, whatever it is, everyone makes their money in different ways, could convert 10,000 into 10,000 within 12 months? You'd just get laughed down, you know. So I think that goes to show, I think the broader community and the growth around Southeast Queensland and how much scope.
Entrepreneurial spirit.
It really is. And what you're seeing is these rapid expansions that's still being done sustainably, but there's a lot of investment pouring in for those styles of businesses. And to then convert that square meterage into double what their square meterage is, you've got to look at the metrics on what their business is actually doing. And that's what's fueling that demand for growth. So that's happening across so many different, business types.
Can you give us what industry types are you seeing that a lot in?
Well, we're seeing this a lot around food manufacturing.
Yeah,
is a big one, and a lot of the sub support systems, appliances. So sub support systems for building and construction.
Yeah,
that's what's fueling a lot of this growth.
And that's not going to go away.
No,
particularly up here in Queensland. Like the demand for construction, be it infrastructure, housing, commercial.
Yeah.
It's just, given the population growth and the Olympics, there's so many kind of indicators to suggest that's going to continue going.
I was speaking to having a sauna with a mate that does site security just 2 days ago, and I said, what do you sign up, maybe, 40, 50 more site monitoring jobs a month? And, they went on to say, no, it's like more like a few hundred a month.
Wow.
And they're Gold Coast base. Like, that's obscene in Southeast Queensland.
But the good news story is that in other parts of the country, a lot of these projects can't even get off the ground. There's like either roadblocks with planning, the cost of construction is too high, issues with labour. Why is Gold Coast doing so well then compared to other places?
Look, there's a number of factors around this, and you look at Sydney, and look, they've had their run in terms of growth. If you look at it comparatively on a square metre basis, if you're looking at a 200 square metre unit in Sydney, that's sort of a desirable comparable, you're talking 13, 14, 15,000 bucks a square metre. And down here and up here, we're talking 6.5, 7s now, which is hard for the locals to get their head around.
Yeah, but affordability looks pretty good for someone coming in too.
Correct. And that's really the comparable. So you look at that runway that the likes of Sydney and Melbourne's a little bit on the downslide now, but the growth that they had over 25 years, we're at the starting line of all of that.
Yeah.
So we're at the starting point, and we're already starting to see constraints around land, and that crosses over into residential, but industrial is highly constrained. So therefore those land values are going up. The construction prices are starting to get a little bit, I suppose, tempered at this point in time. We're not seeing exponential growth like we saw coming out of COVID when there was, double-digit sort of stuff. We're back down into the single digits.
Yep.
But we're at the starting line. So I would anticipate that construction costs will grow, as will land price, and then the sell price will have to follow. That's just a basic metric.
Yeah. Booming market. It feels like we've been in this space for a little while though. So I'm interested to hear you say that we're at the starting line.
And people, and locals talking to locals become, I suppose, somewhat sheltered on their own product and what's available. They don't realise that you go to a 25, 30-year runway of a major capital city like Sydney, and that stretch on growth went for nearly 30 years, and it was double-digit growth year on year on year on year. When you've got a desirable location like the Gold Coast that is highly constrained by mountains, sea and rivers,
yes,
that means what are you going to do? You've got to increase density. You've got to improve approval timeframes. You've got to open these areas up quickly. And if you don't, then you miss that window, because the people trying to get in here, they get frustrated with the process, and then they go, oh, well, look, something else shiny has popped up and I'm going to go run to that.
Yeah.
So whilst I say we're at the starting line, you've got to have local government, you've got to have state government, and to some degree federals getting behind the support of this growth and allowing it to occur. Otherwise, you've got all these great things that you're trying to offer people, and you can't get past the starting point.
Yeah. So are you seeing a lot of kind of interstate interest in Gold Coast?
I would say a lot of migration to the Gold Coast, and therefore owner-occupiers may be wanting to purchase or enjoy the Gold Coast and utilise, commercial industrial facilities. I am finding interstate investors are definitely keen in southeast Queensland, particularly if it's a strong tenanted investment. These guys have done a lot of large format retail stuff recently for respective clients. I would say, though, locals are always willing to, whether it's, pay more for the right property per square metre to occupy it because they have seen the location, they like it, they're willing to pay more, or they're actually understanding private investors who are local are willing to pay a little bit sharper yield because they know that asset, they're comfortable in that asset, they can replace the tenant if they had to.
And the whole time, probably, they're just buying it and they're sitting on it. They're not looking at the exit strategy in a couple of years' time, where perhaps some of these kind of investors that haven't tested the market in the past.
It's absolutely comfortable. They can drive past the property within. You can drive to one end to the other end of the Gold Coast within probably 45 minutes, without school traffic. It's getting a bit busy now.
It's getting a bit busier than that, I'm going to say.
But, yeah, I think we've been very blessed, and I think people are willing to pay more to be on the Gold Coast.
Yeah, that's great. That's great for you. Large format retail you mentioned. Have you done much work in that sort of space? That's a super constrained market too, because you can't.
Absolutely.
And also and it goes hand in hand with the housing. Like housing's doing really well. People will need to then buy a new lounge or white goods, whatever it is, and that's where large format retail definitely comes in.
Absolutely.
Pretty much, there's been a handful. You can count on one hand how many transactions have been like decent size large format retail across the country in the last 18 months. Is this something that is that just the same as any other kind of development, or is that more challenging?
No, it's definitely more challenging. And again, this comes back to the approvals, because large format retail needs a showroom use. And
in a more industrial style of area.
In an industrial style area. So a lot of those tenants have very specific requirements: access to highways, multiple on and off points, north, south. What's the proximity to highway? What's the adjoining businesses in terms of the supporting uses? And
I also think these tenants become very good, particularly the national brands doing it every day, particularly their law teams, acquisition teams, at negotiating with the developers and builders, and can sometimes become a bit demanding, I would assume, because they do it so often.
Yes and no. I think, and I'm referencing one particular site that we bought 3 or 4 years ago, and the history of that site, I was tracking that site for nearly 10 years, and on 2 separate occasions I was the underbidder. So you sit there and you bide your time, and it's he who has the land is the king. Without the land, you can't have those negotiations. And whilst, yes, the Nationals have got very good at doing that and understanding what their product is and what they need to pay in terms of a rent piece, when you've got the land, then you can kind of, not dictate, because that's probably a little bit of an aggressive sort of style of word, but
you're in control.
You're in a little more control, because you know that you tick the boxes. You've got the access to the highways, you've got the approvals, and that might be an MCU that will take a material change of use that might take 12 to 18 months, depending on the level of business need that goes into that site. So you've got to go through a number of hoops to get to the point that you've got something that's leasable. And once you get to that point, that's when the doors can open to some of these broader opportunities. And if you hit that sweet spot of what their need is, there's generally more than 1, 2, 3, 4 businesses that want to be on that site. Mm-hmm. So then you go, okay, well, let's go out to the market and see who's around. 9 times out of 10, it's the local business who's in the area, who knows the area, who wants to upgrade the sizing.
Oh, okay.
And they've been the perfect, and clientele from our side of the coin to get to those leases is upgrading that size to the point where they go, well, this is probably a little bit too big for us, and then okay, well, let's look at some facts on how you can give them some comfort as to how their business can grow into it. And 10 times out of 10, it always fits their need, even though it might be a slight bridge too far. And from a board level, there may be a little bit of uneasiness, I suppose, in terms of the size of the rent. But our experience has always been they get into these buildings and they generally flourish.
And there's minimal opportunity to do that on the Gold Coast most of the time for tenants.
Yeah, vacancy tight.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh,
it's definitely.
I would think it'd be one of the tightest in the country.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's a really tough asset class. It's a good asset class, and it's just tough to get into. It's just so tightly held, big parcels of land. Like there's a lot that go into it.
Oh, look, there is, and there was a fairly major one down in Burleigh that that started breaking all the records coming out of COVID. And if you'd looked at what that is now, you think that's a pretty good buy.
Yeah, drop in the ocean.
Yeah.
How about, do you touch any other sort of like asset classes, say like medical or childcare or any of those sort of ones, which everyone got very excited about, let's be fair, over the last, I don't know,
or even
years,
fuel,
but it's
come off the boil a little bit.
But understandably,
Yeah.
it's supported by population, and there isn't requirement, aging population, or the kids that are coming through, a lot of federal government incentive. Do you do much work in that sort of space in terms of development?
We have done a little bit of it, but someone who's a lot smarter than me gave me some great advice 25 years ago when I started out in this game, and they said, listen, son, you got to stick to your knitting. And I think that is a really great piece of advice in any sort of business that you're in, is stick to what you know. So again, you get back to these little nuances. Is a fuel station the same as a factory? Is a childcare the same as a factory? Is a medical facility the same as a factory? No, they've got all these different needs and criteria that you need to put into the building, so the end user can get the benefit of whatever that design piece is. Now, we're not doctors, we're not childcare operators, and we don't want to be.
Yep. But you would know how to occupy an industrial space.
But when it comes to those nuances that get applied to industrial commercial space, you know it like the back of your hand. Car park, circulation, AV, HRV, all the requirements that you need to move boxes and big machinery, we're all across.
Yep.
Everyone in our business is all across that. Everyone understands the approvals. Everyone understands what the circulation is. Everyone understands GFA, NLA, car park requirements, heights, access widths for roller shutters. I could go on and on about it. And if you've got a team behind you that has been educated specifically for those uses, then it takes all of those questions out of the.
Why go complicate it?
Why complicate it? Whereas if we had some clientele or someone who wanted to do a development that is a dentist, we've got to relearn all that.
Yeah.
And I've got to understand intimately what the dentist knows. And we've done this. And was it successful? Yes. Was the outcome great? Yes. But did I know everything off the bat? No.
Yep.
And what does that do? That absorbs your time.
Yep.
That absorbs your energy of your team, and then your effectiveness on your delivery can be somewhat compromised. And that's why we've really chosen to stick to this type of asset class.
And particularly when there's not a requirement of 5 or 10 other dentist studios to do next, it's going back to industrial, so why not maybe stick to it?
But from an investment point of view, are you seeing, Jackson, much still demand in those sort of kind of niche asset classes?
I would say, absolute top of the mark right now would be large format retail, and then probably like that industrial, potentially e-warehousing, medical style of storage.
What's e-warehousing?
I
like data stuff.
Yeah, data, more like mainly storage logistics for warehousing. No front of house requirement. And then it would be more like industrial, but more like I'll give you an example, like an Ultraderm or a physio that gets set up in an industrial area, like a bit more medical style in the industrial area. and then your, mechanics, sparkies, plumbers.
Okay.
And then I would say after that, it's probably service stations, more typical retail, office, and then,
Not so much childcare.
not so.
in
Yeah,
there,
we
there's
don't get
somewhere?
it. We don't get the luxury of it too much on the Gold Coast, and even in southeast Queensland now, focusing on the Pacific Coast. If you've got good location, again, not too many landowners want to sell.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually maybe the regional ones that are struggling, or
Okay.
maybe the poorer tenants with a high,
Yep.
high turnover.
So I suppose, Jackson, you're doing exactly what Gav is doing as well, and just, doing what you know, and then really servicing those clients in that kind of, particularly in that industrial commercial space.
Yeah, I thought about that when Gavin was saying they try and stick to what they know. If I sell, I think last year I sold over 100 properties. If 80% of those were industrial, and I get an average of nearly 80 or 100 inquiries, that's over 10,000 buyers I deal with who want to buy industrial investments or occupy. If I go list an office,
Yeah.
those 10,000 past inquiries that are really hot are of no use.
Yeah, yeah.
So I try to stick to what I know. I think investments are a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
Some people, if it's a 5 by 5 year lease, whether it's a RACQ tenant, whether it's a veterinarian, whether it's a medical tenant, it's return on investment is probably the same if the location's okay. But yeah, probably definitely I think 80% of my stock would be industrial.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's certainly a really good market to be in, and it certainly has been for a little while, and we're on the runway to it continuing to be. So
Look, I'm not Nostradamus, but what I do see and what we do have access to is a very early stage inquiry, because we are design and construct where sometimes even before the client goes towards purchasing the land, and they can lean on our expertise to help guide them through that. A high net worth individual that might have a mate who's in some of those asset classes that you were talking about might come along, say they want to do X, Y, and Z, and they're consulting us at a very early stage, which is I think the best way to do it, because that way you can sort of leverage our expertise quickly and make the decisions on whether you buy the land or you don't. And that needs to happen quickly.
Otherwise, at times I get it reappointed to sell or auction off a property that's hasn't come out of the ground for 2 or 3 transactions, and I think sometimes, got a few family friends who are architects, so I've got to watch what I say, but I think it's got to look good and be practical, and that's me selling point of view, but I also think for the builders to get it out of the ground, to make it stack up for the developer, and for us to sell it, there's got to be a bit of symbiosis between the builder and the drafting team, which I think you guys and maybe a few other mobs probably do okay.
Yeah.
Do really well.
So it sounds like one of the questions I was going to kind of end with was like, what is the easiest or the best asset class really to kind of be doing? And I think that we've already answered that question. And I think that we can safely say that for all of the reasons that you mentioned about the going through the phases of construction and the cost of construction, the time and all that sort of thing, that industrial is certainly the winner. But can you hazard a guess on what's the next thing or the next boom or the next opportunity that you see within? That's a very big question.
Yeah, it's broad.
It's broad, and you can make it as broad or as not as you like. It doesn't have to be Gold Coast. What's your gut on where we go from here and where the next big win possibly could be?
Jacko?
You can go first
Yeah.
while you think about it.
I think there will be 2 answers. One, I think if the council on the Gold Coast or in southeast Queensland could allow a home office style or a studio where you can have a small factoryette or man cave with 1 bedroom upstairs, I think that could be really affordable.
Okay.
Like if you could offer someone a product where they can live upstairs, it's nice. Legally, they're allowed to.
Yeah.
And they can run some sort of business downstairs, but it's not that old Queenslander style home office where only 20% of your home can be, the front office. I think that would be really cool on the Gold Coast. Otherwise, I think it will be, like it was industrial, then it was the fuel service stations, childcare, now large format retail. Probably the next, I'm not sure what use it will be, but there will be another, data center style or another asset class that really booms in terms of investments.
Yeah.
But not sure what maybe the requirement is right
Yeah,
now.
data
for
centers.
businesses.
Data centers is such a big one, and they're such big, chunky assets as well. Very institutionally owned. Like,
The only time I talk about data centers is if I go to Melbourne or Sydney and chat
Yeah.
to insto clients.
Yeah, yeah.
Otherwise,
It's so
on the
like
Gold Coast,
it's so another level.
it's
But
very
like, there's
small.
so much good connectivity in from Asia and stuff into the Queensland. Like, there's so much. That's a whole different kettle of fish, I suppose.
It is a tricky one. But getting back to your initial question there, Vanessa, I think you've got to look at what drives people to go somewhere and do something. So what are the drivers? You know, why do I want to uproot my family from X, Y, or Z to go to that place and do whatever it is I'm going to do? So you've got to look at those motivations first, I think. Can I make a good living? Can I live in a place that, you know, is going to be affordable, whether I'm paying the mortgage or I'm paying the rent?
Right. Yep.
Can I get a good job? Can my kids go to a good school? Can we have, you know, a great weekend and some leisure activities? You know, all these factors, and you want to have your cake and eat it too. That's what the Gold Coast provides.
Yeah.
And that's what's becoming hotly contested. So if you look at the macros around that, and you go, well, where can you replicate that in another area that can provide you with the same sort of outcome? Well, you're going to be a genius, aren't you?
Yeah. You're going to pick the next thing. But you got to think about it. Gold Coast, like, over the long history of Gold Coast, it was a very boom and bust town. So it's not, but you can't see it ever changing now. It's like it's definitely cemented itself as a major city in Australia, along with Brisbane and Sydney and everything. Like, we actually, in our reports, we actually class it as a whole, like
correct.
Like, it's a city. It's not just like a regional area anymore and all those sort of things.
Particularly with technology, I think I was thinking about, do I go to Sydney to sell bigger assets? Do I go to Brisbane? Why, when you can live on the Gold Coast, travel to Brisbane if you absolutely need to? I think, we're really set up down here.
How about, given the land supply issues, particularly industrial, how about like multi-level, more of that sort of...
That is a great question.
How does that go for rents and for construction costs and all those sort of things?
That is a great question, because the Sydney folk, and I know I keep going back to that because you've got to use that as the comparable.
And they're all hitting basements now and undercover.
They're all basements. They're all driven by multi-level multi-level
but that makes
use.
it all like not stack up then in some...
Not here.
Not here, but in time.
Like, that's the next thing.
If you're thinking about land availability, and you're thinking about does the Gold Coast have the population to support that sort of behaviour? Well, it will at some point. It's just how far and how quick does it get to the point where it's absolutely constrained, where that is the only option is to go multi-level, and you're talking, you know, robots, you're talking all sorts of crazy stuff. But that is a reality. How far is it? Well,
probably not that far.
It's probably not that far when you think about it. So, whilst the Gold Coast, and there's been a couple of smaller developments that have sort of dipped their toe into that space, how successful they've been. You know, whilst I respect the approach and I felt it was somewhat cavalier at the time,
It has been slow.
it has been slow, and that's just the truth of the situation. So, whether that's the local market, the investor market, whether they're ready for that style of development, it remains to be seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But yeah, it is. Yeah.
Well, if you had the land, like, we're not making any new land. Like, do you know what I mean?
No,
like,
Not at all. It's more, what can you bowl over and make better?
Yeah. That's exactly right. And that also then comes back to the whole replacement cost too. Like, there's probably a lot of older assets out there that, given the cost to redevelop them, is it worth redeveloping them in the current point of the market? That's an interesting question
I've
too.
been quite surprised whether it's these guys at Clark's and Gavin's development team or other buyers on
secondary assets.
know how well these guys can purchase things and demolish, where I go, whoa, I thought that thing had 5 or 10 more years left in it.
Yeah, okay.
These guys recently purchased something down in Tweed, and I was like talking to the client going, hey, you know, surely if we spend a little bit more money on the fit out, we can keep this thing going for another 5 or 10 years. And buyers show up, including these guys and you know, 4 or 5 other solid, astute developers all come along going, no, we can afford to demolish that and rebuild. And I was actually surprised. Yeah.
And that really comes down to that whole land use and what's required for that area. Certain areas have certain needs, And if you can do your numbers based on what those needs are, and you know that you've got a fairly deep buying bench when it comes time to putting your finished product on the table to sell, that's the fundamental of whether something stacks or it doesn't, obviously. But you've got to know what those hard costs are, pretty quickly, because these real estate agents put a pretty short time frame on getting to know what your unconditional number is.
Oh,
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is, you have the beauty of being the one-stop shop in terms of you can provide all of that kind of building, construction, or the whole through the whole phase. Whereas a lot of other groups don't, that labour becomes really difficult. And
absolutely. And look, sorry, Jacko, but if you look at it's probably getting back to what you stated there earlier, is where you thought that you could get another 5 or 10 year life cycle out of that building. A lot of these buildings, when they were developed, back when they were developed 10, 20, 30 years ago, they didn't have this pressure of site yield and functionality. So it was easier just to put a smaller building on car parks for days.
Yeah.
Trucks can go around everywhere. We don't have that luxury now. So you've got to get really fine on what's driving the development. And, the form and function are the two biggest things in industrial. And if you can hit that mark and know what your leftover GFA is, well, that's the basic metrics of it. So if you can hone in on that, these brownfield sort of areas are obviously going to become a lot more popular. And we're seeing that in places like Tweed, like Burleigh, where old becomes new, but the new at a higher rate is way more fashionable and functional.
And people are willing to pay it.
And people are willing to pay than to go into some old stock that's been there for 30 years, not well thought out. Doesn't suit their business needs, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And that's what's justifying the spend on the new product. So it's
and buying
just
good location with convenience.
And it's been great to watch Gold Coast mature in that manner.
Are you a Gold Coast boy?
No, I'm originally from Western Sydney.
Okay.
And I came up here 11, 12 years ago with my family, and
Haven't looked back.
And I've been exposed to what happened in Sydney, from say 98, 99 into the early 2000s, where I just watched the place go like that.
Yes.
And that's kind of what I've been drawing on in terms of comparables.
Yeah.
It's a very similar sort of feel. Tightness of labour, material price increases, all the things that we experienced in the Gold Coast in Sydney have been replicated on the Gold Coast. So going through those experiences in Sydney have really helped me on the Gold Coast and dealing with all those factors that you mentioned earlier, Vanessa, and how to overcome that within our business type. So it's been good.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Fellow Sydney person over here.
Yes.
Okay, but well and truly Gold Coast-fied now, though. So,
as I tell everyone, whether it's at a business meeting or a barbecue, you'll be dragging me out in a box. I absolutely love the Gold Coast. I love everything about it, and have built my life, business, my life. My kids go to school here.
Yeah.
My wife was originally from the Gold Coast, so we're very much ingrained in staying here for the long haul.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's actually probably all we have time for today, but this has been a super insightful chat. I think a lot of the audience, from around the country, they see the Gold Coast and, it's a great place to kind of be, but they don't really understand what's going on in terms of the industrial and commercial markets and how it is growing so rapidly. And it's just a really interesting place, and it's a beautiful place. It's absolutely gorgeous day here today. Feeling a bit kind of like I don't want to be in Sydney.
Yeah, and I think that's...
In an industrial shed, that's a podcast studio.
Yes, but I think that is why, not to plug us all, Vanessa, but I think that's why if you're interstate and you actually are wanting to understand on the Gold Coast, give myself or the Clark's team a call. I think you have to be here to understand it. I think, whether it's Gavin's team, whoever else, myself, you get a feeling for what suburb, what street, and sometimes even just a street back can differ pricing. Yeah. And I think if you do want to understand that, I think you should chat to someone local, whether it's build teams, development teams, selling agents.
Yeah, awesome.
Or buyers agents.
Or buyers, no.
Just use us.
Yeah, yeah.
There is a really great business community here on the Gold Coast, and
Well, if you look at the new business numbers, I look at the new business numbers quite a lot, and the Gold Coast is one of these markets where there's churn, they come and go, but the growth is probably larger than any other place in the country in terms of new business growth constantly.
There you go.
So it makes sense. That's why demand for all asset types, like even office, the office market is one of the tightest office markets in the country. I know it's a very small office market, and that's got issues as well, but it's in terms of office vacancy, it's like nothing compared to
we've only got
any.
3 very, very small office precincts on the Gold Coast.
Yeah, but it's certainly a market that's doing really well. But thank you very much for your time, Gav. It was lovely to meet you,
pleasure.
and Jackson as well.
Thanks for the invite.
I hope everyone online learned something today and enjoyed our chat. Like Jackson said, if you need anything, reach out to the team at RWC and also Gav as well. So thank you so much. And thanks again for tuning in. As always, this will be available on YouTube to forever. So sorry, Gav, if you didn't know that, but it's going to be up there for everyone to see for a really long time.
You left that out of the disclaimer.
Also, we will put it up on Spotify as well, so you can listen through to this one and also go back, listen to our previous ones. We've done quite a lot of sessions as well. So again, thank you for joining us. My name is Vanessa Rader. Thank you, Jackson. Thank you, Gav.
Thank you.
And we will see you next time.
Thanks, Vanessa.
Thank you.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome again to another edition of Between the Lines Live.